Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Weekly Awakening podcast. It is your host, Cosmic Colleen. I'm doing this live right now on YouTube, the Weekly Awakening podcast, my channel. No one's watching it yet, so I figured one of the things I want to do is get out there and start doing lives on YouTube because I just enjoy it, and I want to put this a little more of a video with this podcast. So I want to remind everyone, thank you again for following me, for rating, reviewing, subscribing, sending this to people you love that might like it or your friends. That's really helping me get the Weekly Awakening podcast out there. So again, thank you so much for those of you who continue to do that and support this show. Second, I want to make sure everyone follows me on social media, Cosmic Colleen 1C, Colleen Dixon on Facebook. So either Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I go to TikTok first because I do daily transit videos. What happens is I sit down, I go over the weekly transits, I sit with my notes, I meditate, and I write them. But then when I'm actually living the transits, other things come to me, and I make these short videos. So definitely follow me on there if you want to know more about this. This week, we got Mars sextile Saturn today. We have the new moon in Cancer. And then at the end of the week, we got Mars square Pluto and Mercury square Neptune. So it's going to be a deeply healing, emotional, and transformative week. We're beginning, I can definitely say that. Before I get this started, though, after this episode, I'm going to drop another episode. I did an interview with Donna Ferris of Westchester, and this episode is really, really great. She is a newer listener to my podcast, and she reached out to me and said, hey, I have an awakening, a story that I think I would like to bring to your podcast. And she sent me her book. She wrote a book, and it's called We've Got to Stop Meeting Like This, a memoir of misconnections. And it was about 3 of the hardest years of her life were in this book. And so I don't have time right now to read with kids and life. And most of the time it makes me fall asleep. I read astrology books, but even then I'm like picking up chapters and just like doing sort of work in my astrology books. So I said, okay, I'm going to read the cliff notes of this so I get an idea about her before we do this episode. Well, let me tell you, I got this book and I started with chapter 1 and I was hooked and I read the entire book in 2 days, okay? What I loved about this book is, A, how raw and real she was and vulnerable about going through these 3 years, right? With her mistakes, with what she did and didn't do, with just being really raw and honest. Because when we go through some of our hardest times, it's when we grow the most, but it's also sometimes when we act out the most. And that is part of the growing process as well. So in this book, it starts with her finding out her husband had an affair and gets divorced, and then she falls in love again, and then her fiance passes away. And through this time, she also, gets sober, and she is sober right now. And when she wrote this book, as she's writing it, you can really tell not only the raw, genuine truth, but you can also tell how she was able to stay in the middle of the boat, how she was able to accept what was happening around her and still live life. Because if I talk about it all the time on the podcast, we have to accept both good and bad, and and oftentimes they're happening simultaneously in her life. And again, this really shows her strength and her character and how she was able to enjoy the good and bad while a lot of really hard things were happening to her. Now, she was amazing. It was a great interview, and we talk about grief, we talk about love, we talk about happiness, acceptance, how we still fall short in life, all those things. So definitely check out that episode with Donna Ferris, and I highly recommend getting We've Got to Stop Meeting Like This. It is so good. Okay, so happy Monday, June 27th. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. I was exhausted. As I had said last week, I jumped right into doing hair, and I did 5 days of 10-hour days of just straight hair. So I had nothing left in me. Yesterday, I was exhausted, and I actually relaxed for once, and that was very nice. So today we have Mars sextile Saturn. So again, there might be feeling, you got 2 malefics. So today in general, we woke up here in the Philadelphia area, and I know for me it felt a little bit sluggish, a little bit aggressive. When I was driving out to my house, I got flipped off. And then when I was at the bank, I had to do one other thing, other than the original thing I was there for. And this woman huffed her breath and then rolled her eyes. And of course, I reacted by looking over at her and glaring at her, giving her my Virgo rising bitch eyes. You know what those are. And I just let that go. And I was like, okay, that's Mars sextile Saturn. It's not a square, but a sextile, it still brings a little bit of aggression, but like slow aggression. or fights, but fights you're willing to back out of, if that sort of makes sense, or give up on. But I want to talk about this new moon in Cancer. The new moon is going to be, so the moon and the sun are both going to be square Jupiter in Aries right now. Yesterday, I was channeling and writing about what was going to happen in the new moon. Healing mother wounds, emotional pain. This is going to be a really emotional new moon, so let me not beat around the bush and talk about that. As soon as I wrote my notes, again, I think I say this on every episode, I was thrown into my own, like, healing mother pain, my own issues. Not only did I have this sort of, after I wrote it, I was feeling like some mom guilt, and feeling like where I'm not good enough, what I'm not doing good enough, coupled with my own mommy issues, my mom and I had together, and then my sister, and I was like crying. I was upset. We ended up getting into a little tiff, my family and I, last night, and I was like, damn it. Why do I always do that? I write what's happening and then it happens to me, and it happened pretty fast. So I definitely was like, okay, at least I'm really on with this prediction, because today and through the week is going to be an emotional thing. Normally on new moons, we have a very, it's usually calm. Our emotions feel stable. We feel calm and stable. However, having Jupiter in Aries right now and it's squaring it is making it for not stable, right? The moon is not very stable, yet it likes stableness. So the moon is always fluctuating, right? The moon fluctuates in and out of different signs, different phases, and all the time moving and shaping. So you have the moon in its home sign. So in the mother sign, in the goddess sign of Cancer, it is at home in there. So in one way, we are going to seek comfort. We're going to seek cozy. We're going to seek close to home with this new moon and with this week. On the other hand, though, we are going to have some really, really out of the blue emotions, past emotions, triggered emotions around our mother wound. Again, around our own mothering, around our own mothers, around any sort of mother figures in our life. Don't be surprised if it comes out of nowhere. Don't be surprised if resentments come out of nowhere. Don't be surprised if unhealed pain that you thought was, comes out of nowhere. And don't be surprised if you just start crying. My suggestion, put on a good country song. That's the only time I listen to country, is when I am ready to shed some tears and cry. So this is going to be a really emotional new moon. Jupiter in Aries, right? So that is what's really adding to the fire, and especially the fire of painful wounds. It's an Aries sign. So Aries, Mars' sign, is really wanting to activate and really bring out the pain, right, in a big, excessive way, like Jupiter. So we can be really, really surprised. And a lot of these feelings are going to be painful. They're going to come out of the blue. But in some ways, we're going to want to feel them. I think because of that comfort, we're going to want to feel. I know for me, I did some crying this morning and I just allowed myself to do it, but it felt good after doing it, if that makes sense. So don't push it away. Don't stuff it down. We actually talk about that on Donna's episode about accepting what's happening and being uncomfortable in the emotions and how important that is to process that energy. Because when we do not do that, that energy goes elsewhere. It either goes into the body, into our health, it goes into destructive patterns, destructive habits. So it's definitely important to feel whatever is coming up. There is going to be healing, right? That's what this is all about. Beginning a new beginning, maybe a new relationship with your mother, a new relationship with your children. Once you heal these things, we're able to gain new awareness, a new perspective, and move forward. So again, these angry emotions, these resentments that might come up during this time, feel it to heal it. We also, again, we're going to feel a little bit lazy, a little bit cozy, and just out of the blue emotions. We're going to feel emotionally drained. There's also maybe like a little bit of a shift in our relationships, again, especially around the mothering. And I keep going back to the mothering because it's in the moon sign of Cancer. But not only that, like, how do we mother ourselves? How do we comfort ourselves? When we become adults, a lot of times we have us to comfort ourselves. We have us to comfort our inner child when it comes first, front and center. How are you doing that? How are you going to shift your relationship with your inner child? What healing does your inner child need, and how are you going to show up? That's going to be a lot of questions, because right now it's going to be too your inner child showing up and you needing to give yourself the love that maybe you never got or that you didn't get at that time. Doesn't mean our parents are wrong. It means our parents did the best they could and with what they knew, with their own knowledge and their own issues that they go through. That's why I always apologize to my kids when I go wrong, so they know that I am not perfect. I make mistakes. I'm forever evolving just like they are, and I will never stop making mistakes, but I also won't stop growing with awareness. So there that is. So, the moon shifts so fast and it makes things happen. That's why a lot of moon world people, or the moon is always fluctuating our emotions. However, we're in Cancer season right now too. The moon likes stability in its home. It likes stability with its emotions. It likes, well, not with its emotions, more so because that's not happening. More stability in its environment, its home environment, that it can feel these emotions. It likes stability in its people because it mentally and emotionally can't always be stable. It needs things around it to be stable so it can fluctuate through that. It likes to keep close by. Where was I? Okay, so in my book, I always go to my handy book, which I love. Just anytime I really need to think, okay, what do I want to say about this planet, is I love to go to the classical 7 planets and everything they say. And it always just triggers something in me. And so one of the things he wrote in here is the moon is our morality, life within the changeable world where everything is born, grows, fades, and dies like the moon phases. So the moon represents our daily environment, our fortune, the fluctuation with fortune, our body, our deep subconscious emotions. It sometimes crosses with Mercury a little bit. A lot of the mind, body, and spirit, they kind of go together. So again, the moon rules life within the changeable world where everything is born, fades, dies, and changing. That is why the moon is always shifting and why our lives are always shifting, because the moon is. The moon goes void, every few days, and when it's not making an aspect, and a little bit longer than every few days. But what is happening? What is changing? And what do we need to hold on to? With this changing, so much of our life is painful because we can't accept the change that is unfolding. Change is inevitable. Change is always going to happen. If we can accept that, we can allow this change to unfold without trying to gain control and, fix, manage, and control the outcome of other things, which we also talked about on this episode with Donna. Sorry, I am still flying off of this great episode with Donna. I recorded this right after that. So with this new moon, we're going to bring awakenings to our pain. We're going to bring awakenings to healing the mother wound inside of us. We are going to bring awakenings into how we can mother ourselves. How can we mother our inner energy? And how can we show up and be the person that our soul and our energy needs? So again, don't be prepared. Be prepared for out of the blue emotions with this, especially ones maybe maybe around anger, resentment, or something that you really thought you healed, but you didn't. So heal it to feel it. So we're going to start out that week, some emotions. The middle of the week, it's going to get a little bit easier, but then it's going to be a tough weekend. Not as tough, but it's going to be a little bit of a weekend. That's because we have Mars squared Pluto coming up. Mars squared Pluto retrograde. So what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear Mars squared Pluto? Our shadows are coming. Don't run. I'll repeat it. Our shadows are coming. Don't run. We're going to see the shadows of others. However, I think with Mars squared Pluto, depending on where that's happening in your chart, we're really going to see the shadows of ourselves. We're going to come out of this pain, come out of the healing and feeling the pain into the next level, which is then seeing your own bullshit. And it is so important to see your own bullshit. It seems easier to walk around life with ignorance and not knowing and just acting out the way you want to act out. But honestly, it doesn't bring the freedom that awareness does. So Mars squared Pluto, out of the blue, sort of fast fast habits, fast patterns. I wrote something down. There's also going to be some forced energy with that. Something is forced, or someone is forcing you to do something that you don't want to do, and you act out from that. Remember, Mars rules the hard and abrupt. So you can either show up to a situation this weekend and you might be a little bit hard and abrupt. You might be fast and quick to anger and quick to reaction instead of sitting back and pausing for a moment and letting those first initial feelings of angst and anger and pain come up. Instead of acting out on those, you might want to sit back and think about it. However, it's going to be hard until you gain awareness. So you might gain awareness through acting out in that way, through all of a sudden reacting hard and abruptly, as well as someone might act out hard and abruptly with you. And maybe they're full of bullshit, or maybe they're actually telling you some truth that you need to see in yourself. They just might be giving it to you the hard way, or a way that you don't appreciate. But that doesn't mean you can't totally take it all in. So again, there's going to be some forced energy, forcing you to do something you don't want to do. Maybe you are forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do as well. So that might show up, just like addiction. Whatever it is, whether it's food, whether it's weed, whether it's alcohol, whatever it is, you might have trouble stopping yourself, and it can show up like that forced energy. Something in your head is saying, do that, do that, do that, do that, act out on that, even though you know from experience, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I know that's not going to lead to anything good. I know that's not going to lead to anything at all good. And then all of a sudden, you have that forced, your forced energy, and that is revealing to you your patterns of something that, hey, maybe you need to let go. Maybe you need to not drink that glass of wine. Maybe you need to not go out and have sex with that person again. Maybe, that's not treating you the way you deserve, but something is stopping you. Figure out why you can't stop yourself from acting out in that way. We also this week have Mercury square Neptune. So every time Mercury squares Neptune, often we see the deceit in ourselves or other people. We can choose to go into la la land or into a daydreaming world instead of showing up the way we need to show up. We can have hard lessons show up to us this weekend, like I just talked about with Mars squared Pluto, but instead of choosing to reflect on it and grow through it, we might say, you know what, screw that. I'm not thinking about that at all. I'm going out dancing. I'm going to go out and have myself a good time because I want to forget all of that. That could be a way we act out with Mercury squared Neptune. We can also have people manipulate us. Again, these might be some of the patterns you see in yourself as well that come up. Manipulation, anger, deceit, avoidance, that all comes up with Mercury squared Neptune. Oftentimes, I always see it. And again, depending on where this is in your chart, this could be big or small. Sometimes it's just a tiny little bit of deceit, or sometimes it's you seeing how you deceit yourself, how you lie to yourself, how you live in these illusions, and the illusion is brought down in some way when Mercury is squared Neptune. So be prepared for that to take off this week. And whatever you see, just know that you can change that. And maybe for this moment, it's part of your fate to be in it, to experience it, but maybe it's part of your experience so you can grow and learn through it and evolve and change. I say it every episode, probably. That's what we're here to do. We are here to constantly grow. We are always evolving. We will never be perfect. I say this to my kids all the time when they resist or they feel really bad about themselves for getting in trouble. I said, I get in trouble. And that is the truth. I get in trouble still all the time. I not as much, but I definitely get in trouble by different people from acting out. And I said, no matter what, you will always do something wrong because we are meant to grow and to learn. That is where we learn and grow in that. So if you're feeling hard on yourself in general right now, I think today feels a little bit, with Mars sextile Saturn, this whole week is going to feel a little bit of like, wah, wah, feeling bad about yourself or feeling hard on yourself or feeling like shit for some reason, something you did or not. That doesn't mean that you are. Don't make that your entire self. Just because we have these hard days, we have these hard patterns, we act out in certain ways, does not make us a bad character. That doesn't what's the word I'm trying to look for? That doesn't take up who we are as a whole soul. This is just a really small part of you. So whatever truths get revealed to you about yourself this week, pain or someone else, just know that does not take away who you are as a person. This is just a very small part of you. Whew. Lot of talking. This is a good week. I hope everyone does some healing. I hope everyone listens to some country music, cries, and goes on a little bit of an emotional journey this week. It will shift. Whatever you're going through, the pendulum always shifts. It goes from good to bad to good to bad again. And just like in Donna's book, we have to stop meeting this way sometimes in our hardest times in life. Simultaneously, our best times are happening. And most of the time because we are focused on ourselves and we are growing and learning and evolving. I hope everyone has a good new moon. Just allow yourself to do some self-care during this time. Don't even work on your normal manifesting or creating for the month. This is a new moon of healing. Just remember that. I love you all. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys all have an amazing day. Amazing week. I'll be back next week. And definitely check out the episode with Donna.